This advertisement is paid for by Langston & Lott, personal injury lawyers.
Welcome to our program. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh, and with me today to discuss personal injury law is Casey Lott. Casey is the managing partner of the Langston & Lott law firm. Langston & Lott is a Mississippi-based personal injury law firm with a 60-year history of securing multi-million-dollar victories on behalf of its clients. And it's proud of its reputation as one of the premier personal injury firms in the state of Mississippi. Now, Casey and his team handle a wide range of personal injury cases, including car, truck, and motorcycle accidents, dangerous pharmaceutical products and medical devices, as well as, sadly, wrongful death cases. Casey, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. I'm pleased to be here.
Now, before we get into today's topic, tell us a little bit about your history of the firm and why that history is so important to our viewers.
Yeah. When I saw my dad represent a young man who'd been severely burned in a gas explosion where his hot water heater exploded, he was about my age, and it just changed his life forever. And I saw what my dad did to help that young man. He went toe-to-toe with the water heater manufacturer. It was a case that a lot of lawyers would not have taken because it was expensive to prosecute. The manufacturer of the water heater had a lot of money, and they fought it tooth and nail, but he went toe-to-toe with them and won. And I saw how that changed that young man's life, and that's when I decided that personal injury law was what I wanted to do.
Is there a particular focus or approach to the representation of personal injury clients that differentiates, say, your firm from other PI firms?
I think it's the personal connection with our clients. You know, as I said, we're right there in North Mississippi. We're vested in our community. We've been there for generations. And most of the other attorneys that you'll see on television in North Mississippi don't live in North Mississippi. They don't work in North Mississippi.
Oh, those carpetbaggers.
That's right, yeah. And you can't go sit down and have a conversation with your lawyer. You know, with us, we have offices in Tupelo and Boonville. You can sit down with us and look at us face to face and get to know your lawyer. And I think the personal touch that we offer our clients in North Mississippi makes a big difference. You know, one attorney who works in our office came to us from one of our competitors, and his complaint was, you know, they have me handling over 200 cases, and I just can't give any case the attention that it needs.
How could he even remember the person's name, their
Right.
client's name?
Exactly, yeah, and he was just really frustrated by it, and he knew that our case counts were much lower because, you know, we really want to offer a quality service, and you can't do that if you overload the attorneys in your office with too many cases. So, you know, we keep our case counts much lower than our competitors, but that allows us to offer better service and a more personal touch.
And how many attorneys are in your office?
7.
7. Okay, so, and they're not overloaded, which is good to hear. I can certainly see why your firm's been so successful. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, our topic today is personal injury law. How would you define that for our viewers? What constitutes personal injury?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty broad area of the law that can encompass a variety of cases, but it can include workers' compensation cases. It can include your standard negligence case. We do a lot of auto accident cases. Mm-hmm. It can include product liability, premises liability when you're hurt on someone else's property. So it can include mass tort cases where there are dangerous pharmaceutical drugs or medical devices. So a wide variety of cases that result in injury or, unfortunately, sometimes death.
So let's talk about some of the basic rights of our viewers. What are the rights that someone has if they have been seriously injured, whether it's, a car accident or a product, as you mentioned, but it's due to the negligent actions of others? What is their right?
Well, first and foremost, you have the right to seek compensation for your injuries, and you have the right to hold the responsible party accountable through legal action in a court of law. And you have the right to negotiate with the insurance company. You don't have to accept their first offer, and oftentimes their first offer is a very low-ball offer. you have the right to legal representation. You have the right to consult with a personal injury attorney who is going to represent your interest. Most personal injury attorneys like us work on a contingent fee, which means that we don't get paid unless we win your case. And
this is really important. I want to stop here and make sure that people understand this. One of the reasons why so few people call personal injury attorneys, not so few, but those who are afraid to do it, think, oh, it's going to cost me so much money. Attorneys are so expensive. But if you take on a case, you're pretty sure you're going to fight it and you're going to win. So you only get paid if they get paid. Is that correct?
It really alleviates the financial stress of hiring a lawyer. You know, people assume that I have to pay an upfront fee or pay by the hour, and that's how some lawyers work. But personal injury lawyers like us, we work on a contingent fee, so you don't have to worry about that.
And that other point that you mentioned is so important, that people think that the insurance company says, I'm going to pay X, so they have to accept it, but they don't.
Absolutely. And the insurance adjusters, you know, their job is to minimize payouts so they can increase their bottom line. So they're not going to offer you a fair settlement on the first offer. And if they know that you don't have an attorney, the lowball offer will probably be even worse than the first one to your attorney. And we never accept the first offer from insurance adjusters. That's, you know, we know their game.
And somebody who's been injured also has a right to a trial by jury, is that true?
Absolutely. If negotiations fail, they have a right to a trial by jury of their peers, and they have a right to have their case evaluated by an impartial jury who will determine whether they're entitled to compensation, and if so, how much.
And they don't all go to trial, right?
Absolutely not. No, most of our cases settle out of court, but unlike some other firms, if we do have to take a case to trial, we'll be ready.
Casey, I'm sure the information you're providing our viewers today on how Langston Lott can be helpful to those suffering serious injury as the result of the negligent actions of others has been very, very helpful. Let's take a moment now to let any viewer who wants more information to call our helpline. We'll be right back. Have you or a loved one suffered a serious injury as the result of the negligence of another? You may be entitled to significant compensation. And the law firm to call for the help you need is Langston & Lott. Langston & Lott is a Mississippi-based personal injury law firm with a 60-year history of securing multi-million-dollar awards on behalf of its clients and is proud of its reputation as one of Mississippi's premier personal injury law firms. Whether your injury or wrongful death claim is the result of a car, truck, or motorcycle accident, or a dangerous pharmaceutical product or medical device, the skilled attorneys at Langston Lott can help. With millions of dollars in verdicts and settlements on behalf of their clients, they've proven they understand how insurance companies operate and will not settle your claim for less than it's worth. If you or a loved one have suffered injury or death due to the negligence of another, the law firm to call is Langston & Lott. Call Langston & Lott now for a free case review. Welcome back to our show. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh, and with me is the managing partner of Langston Lott Personal Injury Attorneys, Casey Lott. Our topic today is personal injury law and the important contribution it makes to those who have suffered injury due to the negligent actions of others. Now, I understand that your firm has a record of successfully representing particularly automobile accident victims. So, news you can use for me, please. What are the most common types of automobile accidents?
Rear-end collisions are probably the most common type of accident that we see, and that happens a lot at stop signs or intersections or congested areas.
Now, I think I know what you're going to say, but what is the one thing we're doing in our cars that we shouldn't be doing because it can cause accidents?
Texting and driving, no question. But there are a lot of things in vehicles that can be distracting, you know, adjusting the radio or even eating in your vehicle that results in distracted driving.
What are some of the other common auto accidents?
Well, we see a lot of T-bone or side impact collisions. These collisions occur when the front of one vehicle strikes the side of another, forming kind of a T shape. And these crashes often happen at intersections, and, you know, common causes include running red lights or stop signs, or failing to yield the right of way, speeding through intersections, and of course, distracted driving. We also see a lot of head-on collisions. Yeah, these collisions are particularly dangerous because they often, result in severe injuries and fatalities. And distracted or drowsy driving is probably the most common cause of those head-on collisions.
So I do want to say, Casey, if any of our viewers today is involved in an automobile accident, what kinds of things should they do or not do at the accident scene itself?
Well, first and foremost, you want to prioritize your own safety and the safeties of others at the scene. Check yourself for injuries, assess your passengers for injuries. You'll want to call emergency services even if the collision seems minor.
Oh, so let me stop you there. So it's a fender bender, and you're like, well, I probably don't need to call an ambulance. But you suggest people should get medical attention anyway, because are some injuries like painful later?
Absolutely. Whiplash being the most common, you don't feel the severity of that at the scene, and the next day, you can really feel the effects of whiplash in your neck, your back. You may have some internal bleeding or a traumatic brain injury that may not be apparent at the scene, and you may not be symptomatic at the scene, but may be symptomatic later. And if you seek medical attention right off the bat, then perhaps a doctor can diagnose and treat those injuries before they become more severe.
And always do a police report?
Always.
Always,
Absolutely.
even if it's a small fender bender?
Absolutely. When you report the crash to your insurance company, that's the first thing they're going to ask for is a police report. And if you don't have a police report, then the other party can question whether or not it ever happened.
Now, what kinds of information should you exchange with the person you've been in an accident with besides yelling at each other? Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Well, the most important thing is insurance information. You want to exchange that, get the other party's insurance company, their policy number, their name, and exchange that information with them as well. You'll also want to document the scene. If you have a phone, take photographs of the scene, skid marks, yaw marks in the road, the position of the vehicles, the weather conditions, any other hazards like potholes or obstructions like that.
How do you know if you should call a personal injury attorney?
Well, if you've been seriously injured in a collision, you're likely to encounter complex legal issues, and it's always best to consult with an experienced personal injury attorney who can protect your rights and ensure you receive full and fair compensation for your injuries.
Yeah, those are some really good points, good advice. Are there key things a person should be aware of at the accident scene, say after the accident, that could affect their case in terms of the other person's insurance company?
Well, the biggest thing is not to talk to the at-fault person's insurance company or their adjusters.
Oh.
You'll likely get a call from the other person's insurance company in the days or weeks following a collision. They're not calling to help you. They'll record the conversation, and they may later try to twist your words around to deny your claim. For example, saying "I'm sorry" to the other driver at the scene can sometimes be twisted by insurance companies as an admission of fault on your part. So be mindful of your words. Don't sign any documents without allowing your attorney to review them first.
Casey, I'm sure the information you're providing our viewers today on how Langston Lott can be helpful to those suffering serious injury as the result of the negligent actions of others has been very, very helpful. Let's take a moment now to let any viewer who wants more information to call our helpline. We'll be right back. Have you or a loved one suffered a serious injury as the result of the negligence of another? You may be entitled to significant compensation. And the law firm to call for the help you need is Langston & Lott. Langston & Lott is a Mississippi-based personal injury law firm with a 60-year history of securing multi-million-dollar awards on behalf of its clients and is proud of its reputation as one of Mississippi's premier personal injury law firms. Whether your injury or wrongful death claim is the result of a car, truck, or motorcycle accident, or a dangerous pharmaceutical product or medical device, the skilled attorneys at Langston Lott can help. With millions of dollars in verdicts and settlements on behalf of their clients, they've proven they understand how insurance companies operate and will not settle your claim for less than it's worth. If you or a loved one have suffered injury or death due to the negligence of another, The law firm to call is Langston & Lott. Call Langston & Lott now for a free case review. Welcome back to our show. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh, and with me is the managing partner of Langston Lott Personal Injury Attorneys, Casey Lott. Our topic today is personal injury law and the important contribution it makes to those who have suffered injury due to the negligent actions of others. So what I'm sad to say, we got to talk about what's really going on here. What are the most common injuries from car accidents?
Well, whiplash is one of the most common injuries in car accidents, and particularly in rear-end collisions. It occurs when the neck is suddenly forced forward and backward, straining the muscles, ligaments, and tendons. A sudden jolt or impact to the head can cause a concussion or more severe traumatic brain injury. And these injuries occur even if the head doesn't directly hit anything, as the brain may move inside the skull due to the force of the crash.
Let's now turn to the law itself. I understand Mississippi is an at-fault state. What exactly does that mean, and how does that affect our viewers' rights in, say, an auto accident case?
Yeah. Mississippi's a comparative fault state, and comparative fault is just a legal principle used to determine how liability is shared when multiple people contribute to a crash. So instead of placing all the blame on one driver, a jury in Mississippi will have the option to assign a percentage of fault to, if it's a two-vehicle accident, to both drivers. For example, if one driver was speeding but the other failed to yield at a stop sign, then both could be considered partially at fault. A jury could say one person was 60% at fault and the other's 40% at fault.
And I got to ask you, who determines these percentages?
Well, that's where a good personal injury lawyer comes into play. There will be back and forth between insurance companies and your attorney, and if you have a seasoned personal injury attorney, they can maximize your recovery and even if your case goes to trial, convince a jury to apportion more fault to the other driver. Determining fault and liability can be complex. One of the most critical aspects of any auto crash case is determining who's at fault. Establishing fault and liability requires gathering evidence, reviewing police reports, interviewing witnesses, and sometimes hiring accident reconstruction experts. And, another reason is car crashes often result in significant financial burdens on victims. Medical expenses, lost wages, repairs to your vehicle, the emotional trauma that's associated with all of that. And victims of car crashes often underestimate the total cost of their injuries and unfortunately settle for far less than they deserve.
So many people are using ride-sharing services now, mainly because they've been drinking, and that's really good news. But what if they get in an accident and say an Uber or a Lyft? Is it any different?
Absolutely. Those cases are more complex than your typical car crash cases. First and foremost, there are multiple layers of insurance and could be multiple insurance companies that you have to deal with. But as a passenger in a ride share, you have more rights. You have the right to recover regardless of who is at fault.
I happen to know that your firm is known for obtaining record results in auto accident cases. What does your firm do differently to achieve these big results?
I think it's a combination of several things. First, I think we're really good lawyers. Not all lawyers are created the same, and there's a reason that some get better results than others. At our firm, you're going to get top-notch lawyers that meticulously prepare your case for trial. In addition to that, I think our client-centered approach is unique. We prioritize personalized legal strategies, and we have a deep understanding of our clients' unique needs. Unlike many firms that take a one-size-fits-all approach, we invest the time to thoroughly analyze each case and explore every potential angle to get the best possible solution for you.
So what is the cost of auto accident representation by Langston Lott?
Well, we work on a contingent fee, which means that the lawyer only gets paid if they win your case. Instead of charging upfront or hourly fees, we take a percentage of the compensation we obtain for you. If we were to lose your case, which we don't plan to do, you wouldn't owe us a dime. And this allows our clients to pursue their legal claims without any financial risk, which we think is the right way to do it because it ensures access to legal representation regardless of your financial situation.
That is the best part. That's what I love about your firm, that people won't go into a financial burden after they've already been injured. Casey, I'm sure the information you're providing our viewers today on how Langston Lott can be helpful to those suffering serious injury as the result of the negligent actions of others has been very, very helpful. Let's take a moment now to let any viewer who wants more information to call our helpline. We'll be right back. Have you or a loved one suffered a serious injury as the result of the negligence of another? You may be entitled to significant compensation. And the law firm to call for the help you need is Langston & Lott. Langston & Lott is a Mississippi-based personal injury law firm with a 60-year history of securing multi-million-dollar awards on behalf of its clients and is proud of its reputation as one of Mississippi's premier personal injury law firms. Whether your injury or wrongful death claim is the result of a car, truck, or motorcycle accident, or a dangerous pharmaceutical product or medical device, the skilled attorneys at Langston Lott can help. With millions of dollars in verdicts and settlements on behalf of their clients, they've proven they understand how insurance companies operate and will not settle your claim for less than it's worth. If you or a loved one have suffered injury or death due to the negligence of another, the law firm to call is Langston & Lott. Call Langston & Lott now for a free case review. Welcome back to our show. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh, and with me is the managing partner of Langston Lott Personal Injury Attorneys, Casey Lott. Our topic today is personal injury law and the important contribution it makes to those who have suffered injury due to the negligent actions of others. Casey, we've talked a lot about automobile accidents, but that also includes motorcycle accidents and large trucking accidents?
Absolutely, and those cases can be very different than your average passenger car crash. You know, there are a lot of state and federal regulations that apply to trucking companies and drivers that don't apply to private citizens. And, you know, unfortunately, these big truck cases often result in more severe injuries because you have a truck that can weigh up to 80,000 pounds and a passenger car is 3,000 pounds, and just the heavier weight results in more severe injuries. And similarly with motorcycle drivers, they just don't have the protection that other drivers in passenger vehicles have, and you very rarely see a minor injury in a motorcycle crash.
I'm thinking claim amounts in these kinds of cases would be even more significant due to the seriousness of those injuries?
No question. The claim value in trucking cases is on average significantly more due to the fact that the injuries flowing from big truck crashes are typically far more severe and serious.
Is there a time limit? Let's talk about time and deadline again on filing cases if it's been an accident involving a large truck.
Absolutely. There are time limits on all cases, including truck accident cases, but one of the big things in truck accident cases is evidence preservation. You know, you want to make sure that you preserve evidence at the scene, the black box data, things of that nature, and if you don't preserve those quickly, they might be lost or destroyed.
Okay, Casey, we're going to get off the roads now. I understand that Langston Lott also handles what are known as slip and fall claims, and that's where somebody is injured on somebody else's property. Can you explain to our viewers about that area of the law?
Sure. Those are difficult cases because the plaintiff in a slip and fall case has to prove that the property owner knew or should have known about the hazardous condition on the property that caused the plaintiff to fall, and that they had time to do something about it, but they failed to.
Also, how is compensation determined in those kind of cases?
Compensation is determined in much of the same way that it would be in an auto accident case. It's based on the severity of your injuries and any lost wages that flow from your injuries.
Langston Lott also handles cases involving dangerous medical devices. What can you tell us about this practice area?
Yeah, we've handled a lot of cases involving dangerous medical devices such as, recalled hip implants, defective hernia mesh, defective defibrillators. Unfortunately, medical device recalls are not uncommon, and these cases require specialized expert testimony from engineers and medical professionals.
Medical devices are one thing, but representation of people injured by dangerous consumer products is also a personal injury area your firm handles. Tell us about this.
Yes, product liability litigation is a big portion of our practice, and we've handled cases involving defective water heaters, hair relaxer products, gas cans, herbicides, earplugs. We often litigate against Big Pharma for defective pharmaceutical drugs. Those cases also require specialized expert testimony, and they can be complex. So many injury firms in our area don't handle those types of cases, but that's a big part of our practice.
When a viewer has passed away as a result of the actions of another in any of the situations that we talked about, how can your firm assist their families in receiving fair compensation?
Yeah, unfortunately, we see that far too often in our line of work, and that's one of the more difficult parts of our job, and it just compounds the tragedy when it's a man-made tragedy and a preventable death. But under Mississippi law, the families of victims in wrongful death cases can seek compensation for the victim's pain and suffering before his or her death, the lost wages that flow from the death of a loved one, funeral and burial expenses, and loss of the wrongful death beneficiaries, their loss of the society and companionship of the decedent, and oftentimes that's the biggest loss.
Are there awards and settlements that you're particularly proud of that you had to fight really hard for?
Absolutely. You know, a few come to mind. There was a $6.5 million award that we obtained for a toddler who was burned by scalding hot water, and it, that one really tugged on us. And we've had a $2.8 million settlement in another gas explosion case that tragically resulted in the loss of an elderly woman's life. We've had a $2.3 million settlement in a trucking accident case where the victim was a father and husband, and tragic cases, but we're thankful that we were able to get justice for those families.
Thanks, Casey. The information you've given us today is going to be so helpful to many of our viewers and their families. Langston Lott's record of holding responsible parties accountable and making difficult times easier for clients is something that I think you have a right to be very proud of. Thanks for joining us today, Casey.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh.
And thanks to you for watching our show. Have you or a loved one suffered a serious injury as the result of the negligence of another? You may be entitled to significant compensation. And the law firm to call for the help you need is Langston & Lott. Langston & Lott is a Mississippi-based personal injury law firm with a 60-year history of securing multi-million-dollar awards on behalf of its clients, and is proud of its reputation as one of Mississippi's premier personal injury law firms. Whether your injury or wrongful death claim is the result of a car, truck, or motorcycle accident, or a dangerous pharmaceutical product or medical device, the skilled attorneys at Langston Lott can help. With millions of dollars in verdicts and settlements on behalf of their clients, they've proven they understand how insurance companies operate and will not settle your claim for less than it's worth. If you or a loved one have suffered injury or death due to the negligence of another, the law firm to call is Langston & Lott. Call Langston & Lott now for a free case review.
This advertisement is paid for by Langston & Lott, personal injury lawyers.